Dr. Kaiser, I'd like to start with you, invite you to reflect your thoughts on the relationship between these indicators that we talk about all the time and the wider mass of the world in which the wider citizenry lives.
Basma Jahangir, with whom had some long association. And as I said in the morning session also, my last meeting with her was in Quetta, in the Serena Hotel, when I was working with the Chief Minister of Balochistan. We sat about 2.5 hours in the lobby of Serena, and what we talked about is she wanted to have a program in HRCP on economic rights. So I think it's very appropriate that we are in this session today. We've had 2 sessions on the economy, one we had in the morning and one now. Your question, yes, I think the people on the street, the households, families, they certainly do not discuss any of these issues. Although there has been so much mention in the media of growth rate that a lot of people are familiar with the term. Those who use it knowingly, policymakers, and there are many in government who use it frequently without knowing what it means. That's a personal experience. We have taken it blindly, that if the growth rate is high, everything is good. But what really matters is the composition of that growth rate. The growth rate is an average. Actually, it's an average of averages. So there are about, if you split the economy into different sectors, you can actually, sectors and subsectors, there are about 32. And the growth rate of each of the 32 then translates into the GDP by applying weights. That's technical stuff, but so there's an average. What I mean is, if there's a class, when I teach in a class, Aisha has also been teaching, Ali Hassan is also, we are all teachers, or I'm a temporarily ex-teacher. If you have a class of students who are 20-year-old, and I am teaching them, I am 70 years old. If you take an average, then the average age of the class will be somewhere around 30 maybe. But that will not reflect the reality of neither my age nor the student's age. So averages are misleading. You have to decompose that average to see what's happening. We've had 1 year where the growth rate was 9%. And it was said, this is stellar growth rate, we are becoming an Asian tiger, and so on and so forth. But that 9% was completely misleading, because what they did was that there are 2 things. One, they opened up the consumer market, consumer credit market. So everybody was buying cars and houses and so on and so forth. You could even take a loan for a vacation. So the banking sector boomed. Because of the interest income, suddenly they were taking, their portfolio increased. In fact, in 2 years, around 2004, 2005, 2006, the banking sector growth rate was 30 to 40% annually. That one average brought up the rest of the average, just like the 70-year-old teacher brings up the average of the whole class. So it was misleading. So it's the composition of that growth rate is very important. The commodity producing sectors is what matters, which is agriculture and industry. They produce the commodities. The trade and other sectors, transport, all depends on that. If commodity sectors are not doing well, the other sectors cannot do well unless you fudge the data, and that has been done a lot. Today, Pakistan, now, currently, in the last 20 years and increasingly over the last few years, wealth is being created in the speculative markets, stock market, property market, commodity market. And that does not create surplus for export, because what you need in these markets, if I am an operator here, all I need is 2-3 telephones, sit in my house, sip coffee, and manipulate markets and make a lot of money. I'm not creating jobs, and I'm not creating goods for export. So employment is not increasing, and exports are not increasing. In fact, it is amazing. Probably, I don't know, Khurram, we may be the only country in the world where our exports are standing where it was 10 years ago, 24, 25 billion. It's just not moving. So for the people, what really matters is jobs. What really matters is prices, so that their real income remains the same. Their purchasing power does not erode. That's what matters to them. And on top of that, they of course want to improve the quality of their life, so they need their real income, their purchasing power to increase. Purchasing power, if you don't have jobs, then even low inflation doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if things are cheap. You have no income, you can't even buy cheap stuff. So what's the use? So employment is number one. I think what matters to people is employment. There are two deficits, the budget deficit and the trade deficit. People don't talk about it, but in a way that determines how the economy functions. These are two wheels of a bicycle. If you have consistently high, very high expenditures over revenue, which right now it is 2 to 1, sort of, and you have very high imports over exports, which are also 2 to 1. For every $100 of export, we are importing $220 of imports. And it is consistent over the years, this gap, then you have to borrow to manage. And we've borrowed so much that now all the loans we take are for repaying past loans. We are not taking any loan now for building any infrastructure, any economic asset. It's just not happening. All of it is program loan, budgetary support. So these matter to the economy and to jobs and to inflation. We are facing inflation today, and if you trace it backwards to where it is, you will trace it to these two gaps. Dr. Aisha also and Dr. Hasnain also said that we've been targeting wrong variables and so on and so forth. I don't think anything has been wrong. The economy is doing great. Everybody has opportunity, everybody has good education, good housing. It all depends whose narrative are you talking about. There is a part of this country, the elite, the Shrafia, for whom everything is going great. They have excellent housing, they have more domestic servants in the house than members of the family. They don't need public transport. They can do everything on their own. They can buy land, they can build houses, they can set up their own schools, they can set up their own hospitals, and so on and so forth. They don't need anything. They don't need the state. And they've done very well. And this is where Pakistan has fallen into, that the state is just an onlooker. The purpose of the state is to extract money from the poor so that the rich can have a good life. So there's nothing wrong in this economy from their perspective. Future of the economy, if there's a vehicle without a driver going down the hill, and if you don't somehow stop that vehicle, it will continue going down the hill. We are going down the hill. Effectively, Pakistan is already bankrupt. As Dr. Aisha said, we are borrowing to pay back our loans, we are borrowing to pay our soldiers, we are borrowing to pay our civil servants. How else will you define bankruptcy? We are already a bankrupt nation. You can turn around. There is no problem without a solution. We have to cut down our non-development expenditure, transfer bulk of it into development expenditure, because land has been to be developed for housing, only the state can do that. Public education, only the state can do that. Public health, only the state can do that. Infrastructure for industry, only the state can do that. Infrastructure for agriculture, only the state can do that. Where will that money come from? It has to come out of non-development expenditure, and the biggest chunk of non-development expenditure is defense. Defense has to go. This whole narrative of security is just something that can no longer be justified. And okay, if I can concede, I will say I am not talking about combat expenditure because I don't know much about defense. I don't know which guns should we buy or which bullets to buy. But I am certainly competent to talk about non-combat expenditure. You drive from Lahore to Peshawar, and I've actually done it once. You will come across a cantonment on the national highway. Every 40 kilometers on average. And there are 3 cantonments which are 10 kilometers of each other. All these cantonments were built by the British when there was a danger of Tsarist Russia invasion from there. Now we have friendly regimes up to Moscow. You don't need any of these cantonments. Maybe out of 2 or 3, the rest have to go. Cut down that expenditure. Every country in the world has a coast guard which protects your coast during peacetime. Pakistan has a coast guard and a maritime security agency. 2 organizations doing the same job. I can go on and on, so many. So non-combat expenditure can be cut down to 80%, if not 0. You know, there was recently a case of this club on the Rawal Lake or something which they had built. Only the swimming pool was 5 crore rupees. Why do you need that? In Lahore, there is an army museum when you go to the airport from here, you know. I don't know how much it cost. I don't know how it has helped liberating Kashmir. I don't know how much it has helped protecting us from these bloody Indians or whatever. That has to go. That is where the problem is. The problem is there are 2 Pakistans. The Pakistan of the elite have a completely different vision of this country. They are very happy. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with this country. Everything is fine. Their literacy rate is 100%, infant mortality is 0, and so on and so forth. The rest are riffraff. They can take care of themselves. That has to change. We have to make one Pakistan.
Okay.
So, everything for everybody.
Many thanks, Dr. Kaiser, for that.